Today, I've got in the discussion one of the legends of Bradley County. You all know him. If you know him, you're probably friends with him. One of my oldest friends, Johnny Brewer, the Johnny Brewer. So Johnny, the first time I met you, I was at John Paul Douglas's real estate office on 25th Street. And if I remember correctly, you were installing a drop ceiling.
Yeah, you're right.
I believe that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
And you had partnered with Glenn Ramsey to build that. Is that right?
I was originally in partners with Glenn Ramsey. That was in 1974. And we built the first one next to McDonald's.
Yep.
And then we paved over on the neighbor's property, but for extra parking.
Yeah.
And Roy Guthrie didn't care. He owned that property at that time. But there was a man back in the subdivision that caused a problem. And so the city commission just went ahead and rezoned it. We had a deal with Roy Guthrie, if it was ever rezoned, that we could buy it at a preset price. But we thought it would be a couple of years. Okay. We had just finished the first building. We were in what I call investment shock.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they rezoned it and we had to buy it or somebody else would.
And knowing Roy Guthrie, he wanted the money.
He wanted it right then.
Yeah.
And so we bought the other property, scared to death. This was in a recession in 75. Okay, we were worried it wouldn't rent. And the way it worked out, they were really jumping on us every week. Cordy Davis wanting to know when her beauty shop was going to be ready. That whole building through there was rented before we ever got it finished.
I remember I was at the liar's table. I was just a kid. And they said, that'll never work. I remember them saying that. That tells how much the liar's table knows.
Yeah.
What was it like being partners with Glenn?
Being what now?
Partners with Glenn.
I got a lot of respect for Glenn Ramsey. And Glenn had been working at Bowaters and dabbling along in real estate, from what I understand, on his long weekends and whatever. A lot of men did that back then.
Yeah.
And I met Glenn on Inman Street because I worked for Exxon Company USA up at Turnpike Exxon on the corner up there. And you never know about these big companies. So I talked my wife into, we'd buy that property there beside our McDonald's. And I said, Gail, I believe I could sell rocks on this street. I know everybody. And I bought it for insurance from Glenn Ramsey. Okay, I just let it sit there. I had no intentions of doing anything. I just wanted a piece of 25th Street. Okay, yeah. Now then Glenn Ramsey comes back at me about 2 years later after I'd bought it. And he rolled out the plans for an office building. And he wanted to buy half of the property back. And we would build the 25th Street Plaza. And I just said, okay, let's do it. And then Glenn was kind of slow to get the footers dug and come out of the ground. Mm-hmm. And so me and the Farmer boys, Tommy Farmer. The concrete finishing boys, we actually built the forms and shot grade on that first building with the headlights on my wrecker.
Golly.
One night down there. And before Glenn knew it, I was already building the building. And so we built that one, and then later on, of course, 75, we built the next one. Jimmy Nolan.
Boy, he was fast, wasn't he?
Real
He
quick.
was the fastest carpenter alive.
Yeah, and to show you how times have changed, $1 a square foot to build the buildings. He dried them in for $1 a foot. And I guess he made money because,
Oh, yeah, Jimmy Nolan was a good businessman.
yeah.
He just had a little problem.
And so Glenn wanted a real estate person, land does not have a home if you're in real estate. It's always for sale. And I wanted it for a for my umbrella. I didn't work where I could have a big retirement, so I wanted to keep it, and Glenn was always wanting to sell it.
Oh, Glenn always sold within about 5 years, didn't he?
Yeah.
For some reason, that was a magic number for him.
And so he come up with a number to sell the first building there, where Sonic is at today. He come up with a number to sell it to Hank Smith. And I said, okay, Glenn, why don't I just give you the money instead of Hank Smith? And I'll buy you out instead of Hank Smith. And he said, give me time to think about it. So he talked everything over back then with Dimples.
Dimple Cox.
Yeah.
Dimple Cox.
Yeah. And he talked it over with Dimples.
That was his assistant, just a secretary, wasn't it?
Secretary, yeah. And she was really good.
Yeah.
And so he come back and said, John, I believe I'm just going to do it. And so I bought Glenn out, and he and I are still real good friends. You know, matter of fact, he came to see me not long ago.
Is he doing okay? I hadn't seen him.
Yeah, he was what I call mobile.
Yeah.
You know, he's up and around. And so...
I really like Glenn. He's a good guy, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. And don't underestimate Glenn. Glenn's smart.
He is one of the smartest. Beside you, you and him are as smart on real estate as anybody I've known. Just because I've been watching this stuff since I was 10, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I've watched people, and I believe you could navigate any environment.
You have to.
And what is that key? Because you can see people in real estate today. They can buy and they can sell and they can make money. But there's some people that just have a sense for what's coming or something. Does that make?
It's hard to identify.
It's hard to identify.
It's hard to identify. And I watched a legend in this town, Cletus Benton. And Cletus Benton, if you notice, he did not buy a piece of property and wait on town to come to him. Mm-hmm. He would buy a piece of property and build his own town.
That's right.
And so I kind of watched him through my life, and I had dabbled in some real estate before the plaza. Bought a farm out on Morgan Road, right off of Eureka. Mm-hmm. And I bought it on a 90-day note.
Boy, I bought more property on it. You talk about praying, that'll make you pray.
With my buddy Bobby Taylor.
Oh, the banker.
Yeah, it was Merchants Bank.
Merchants Bank, yeah.
And I bought it, me and Bob Reimer and I went in partners on it.
The oil guy, the gas station guy.
It was one of them old deeds, 40 acres more or less.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, there was 8 acres across the street that everybody just forgot about. And when we had the survey done for the bank, they said, you know, you own 8 more acres over here on the other side of the highway. And so we had 48 acres.
But Johnny, you've always been what I would consider a working investor, not just to buy, sell, hold. You literally worked in it.
Oh, I worked out there every hour I was not working at Farmers Chemical. I was out on that farm there, cutting brush, piling brush, cleaning up.
Where did that come from in mentally?
That had to have been from my grandpa Brewer, because Wesley Brewer hated the farms. He said, son, when I left the farm, I never looked back. He said, your grandpa worked me to the bone. And when I left, I didn't want no farms. And so I had to inherit it from Fletch Brewer, Andy Fletcher Brewer.
The work ethics?
I don't know Dean, where that come from, I believe at a young age, I looked around and I didn't see any rich relatives at all. Nobody. And I knew that if I was going to make it, I'd have to do it myself. And so I got to thinking one day, I'm 20 years old.
What year was that?
That would have been, you're wanting to date me, aren't you?
Roughly.
1964.
64.
That would have been about right. And I got to thinking, if theoretically, if I worked 40 years, I'd be 60, pretty close to retirement age. If I work twice as hard, I can retire at 40 instead of 60. But I cut it in half by working twice as hard. That was just a goal, you know. And
But you didn't stop.
I could have retired at 40.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun, I wanted to keep working.
What's fun? What do you find fun about it?
Making a deal and making it work. It's not the money. It's coming up with an ideal and put the ideal out there, put it on paper, and then put it out there and see it happen right before your eyes. And it's like a big giant pat on the back that somebody gives you by succeeding at something. You know, when you're a young man or a young lady in school and you do real good, they stick one of them stars up on your hat, don't they? Mm-hmm. And then
Gold Star, they used to call them.
Right. And now when you get into the real world, there's nobody giving you no gold stars. And hardly ever you get that pat on the back. And none of us, we all require the pat on the back. You know, no matter how old we are, you love for somebody to say, you know, Dee, you did a fine job right there. You did well. And
do we need that, or do we just like to have it?
No, we need it. Yeah. We need it. When you succeed, you need to be acknowledged, and somebody needs to tell you that you did well. You done good. Yeah.
Well, people don't do that anymore, do they?
No, they you know, as an adult, we're not to expect a compliment. I don't think. You know.
Maybe that's what's wrong with us. We don't get enough of them.
Yeah. If somebody does well, I always and I'm not. You know, buttering them up, I guess would be a good word. If somebody does well, I compliment them on their work. I say, hey, you know, you did that exactly the way I wanted it done, and I appreciate it.
Is that worth money to them, more than money?
Oh, yes, surely. Yeah. And I thought at a young age, everybody said, what was you doing at a young age? What was you thinking? And I said, well, I sat and thought a lot and come up with a lot of ideals. And a lot of people pipe dream, but they never put their pipe dreams into action. I'd think of something and I'd make it work. I'd just go ahead and dive in. And,
did you do a lot of planning, or was there a lot of planning behind the scenes?
I'll tell you what helped me more than a lot of, I don't know that it even exists now, but when I joined the Cleveland JCs years ago.
Troy Dixon, he was in the JCs.
Ted Moss was the president of the Cleveland JCs.
We've heard that name, haven't we? Isn't that something?
Yeah. And later on, of course, there was Stony Brooks.
Stony Brooks. Troy Dixon, was Troy Dixon in there? Troy
was
Remember
in there.
Troy?
And
I liked Troy, didn't you?
I thought the world of Troy.
He was smart.
Yeah. And let's see, Gary Houston, you can go on, Willie Bain, a lot of people in there.
So that was the JCs. That's where you got up and gave a little speech?
Well, it's one of the few organizations that you could actually take on a project. They would make you the chairman, and you could actually fail at that project. But if you did your chairman's planning guide correctly, at the end of the year, you get a trophy or an award. Even though you fail, they still give you an award.
So it was one of those pats on the back we're referring to.
That was your pat on the back. And then we had some good speakers that come in every so often, and motivational people. And I got a lot out of those meetings. You could go before the board of directors with a project that you thought of. Like I thought of a demolition derby. And I went before the board of directors and they grilled me. I mean, they put you through it. And then you convince the board of directors why this is a good project. And one of the questions I never will forget is, do you anticipate any problems? If you do, what are your alternate plans? And you had to answer those questions. It might rain that day. Okay, I had another thing there about how I would handle a rain day, with rain checks. Mm-hmm. And we had we filled the Cleveland Speedway up with people watching the demolition derby. They was as many as if it was a race night. And we drew people from Florida. We drew people from Texas. We had people from New York. And I don't know what it would do today with the social media.
Oh, it might do. Yeah, that was pre-social media, so your challenges were harder even getting the word out.
Yeah, and I have to tell Tom Rowland that I've already told him through the years, he helped us tremendously. Tom Rowland on WCLE, mm-hmm. And it was
to announce
Tom's Clock Show. He'd talk about the demolition derby, and we had Sheriff Lamar Lawson, mm-hmm. Elvis Brandon. We mm-hmm. had Chief Bernard Snyder, the senior, and I had a car built for the Highway Patrol, and they came to me and said it came out of Nashville that wasn't the image that they wanted to present, and they wasn't going to be able to drive their car. So I think that's the one I converted for Elvis Brandon. We just had it for the high sheriff, the chief of police, and the highway patrol.
But before you got into that with Glenn, you worked at the Turnpike Station. Is that the name of it?
Turnpike Exxon.
Which was where exactly?
It's up there on the corner of 25th Street and Frontage Road, I guess that is, through there. That goes down.
I can't place that in my mind.
It's a pharmacy now on the corner there.
I don't remember that being a gas station, but I guess it was.
Well, it went from a service station to a deli called Shalasky's.
I remember that.
Shalasky's.
So prior to that, it was that's right, because they had tanks in the ground they had to clean up.
It was an Exxon store. We were taught to call it our store, mm-hmm. By the management. Yeah. And it was there from, I moved in there, and it was in March 1971, March the 1st.
What was your job there?
What was my job?
Yeah.
To manage the service station, and I put my wife in the office. She'd come by every evening and count the money and do the books. And she was working at Maori Battery Company, and she didn't want me to quit my job at Farmers Chemical. And I said, no, I've promised them that I'd take the station, and I'm a man of my word. I'm not going back. I'm going to run that service station. She said, well, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to quit my job. And I said, don't want you to quit your job because you got insurance, we've got everything paid for, and we can live off your check while I take my shot at the business world. About 2 weeks later, she come bouncing in and she said, well, I turned my notice in today. And I said, you what? She said, I hate that place. I want out of there. And so you're going to make it. Don't worry about it.
So you was what, 20?
27. Yeah.
What had you done before then?
Let's see. Yeah, about 27 years old.
What did you do before then?
Farmers Chemical. I worked down there next to TNT, and Farmers Chemical, it was a co-op with the farmers, mm-hmm. and we made the Green Charger fertilizer, And,
had you gone to college for that?
No, I'm an 8th grade dropout.
So in the 8th grade, you said, I'm out of here?
I quit to 8th grade because I broke my leg, and for different reasons, I just went to work. And
How'd you break your leg?
I broke my leg on a motorcycle in the backyard of the elderly Mr. Ellis that had a Esso station down on South Lee Highway, which later on people would remember it as the White House.
Oh.
The White House, it was a tavern.
Yeah, that was where,
Gene Norris with the U-Haul was
no,
there
but
for a
before
while.
that, isn't that where Hazel Bradley worked? And she worked for Mr. Hooker?
I remember it from back, I'm dating myself here. I remember back, I was born in 44, and I remember, and it's hard to believe it, but I remember about 1946, 2 years old.
Oh, I believe you. Your memory is
I
unbelievable.
can remember going down there with my daddy to get the oil changed, and back then they had to tune their cars up about every 10,000 miles. Them old points and stuff would wear out real quick.
Yeah.
And we lived up the street under a big oak tree there. My tree's gone now. I should have got a picture of it. But I was there at the station, and they were digging the great big lake across the street. And everybody knew it as Cedar Lane, the Cedar Lane Lake. Okay, I'm in there, and I noticed that, and the reason I remember it probably was everybody was all excited and running every which way. A bulldozer was sinking over there across the street.
There's a warehouse there now, isn't there?
The sealer company that sprays this sealer in the bed of your truck, seal coat people, they're over there. It was a Guff store there for a while where that lake was at. The spring is up there behind the Katie's Kitchen or whatever they call that.
John Kinder had those apartments for years.
That's right. And that spring fed that big lake down there. I watched the lake being dug, and then years later I rode by there and watched them fill it in. You know.
I never knew there was a lake there.
Yeah, big, beautiful lake. And there was a swan that people brought stuff, I guess, like they do up here at the duck pond. And you want to get rid of your ducks, take them down there and turn them loose, you know. And there was a Canadian goose down there.
Q Hooper was in the White House, and Hazel Bradley worked for him.
Q Hooper.
Q Hooper.
Big Q.
Big Q.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Later on, I think him and his son had a problem there.
I think which one shot which, wasn't there?
Well, I didn't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but little Q shot and killed his daddy.
Yeah.
Big Q. And the first time I knew him, they was bootlegging whiskey over in the ward. Q Hooper had a place over there on the corner. And that was where my stepdad, Mule Swafford, he worked for Q Hooper. That was way back years ago.
I don't even know how I knew that.
You know, that's amazing that your generation would remember Q Hooper.
I remember, well, see, I knew Hazel Bradley.
Yeah.
Who worked at the Banner, and then she worked for Bruce Renner. Remember when she worked for Bruce Renner?
She worked for Bruce, yeah. And Red Lawson, of course, was a friend of Q's, and that was that little, I guess you call it the mafia type circle. I don't know, but they were in the clique.
Yeah, they were in the clique.
Yeah,
and Hazel was too. I didn't want to cross her when she was 80.
Yeah, but
so. How did you get a job? That was a pretty good job at the chemical place, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I went down to Collegedale and took the GED test, and I got my GED diploma. Now I go to Farmers Chemical, and they sent me into different schools and training, and then later on, I went to Cleveland State with Stony Brooks. Stony Brooks taught a real estate class.
Yep.
And I went there, and then Exxon later on sent me to retail training, you know. And so a lot that I guess that I learned as a young man at the Farmers Chemical, the guys I worked with were college graduates with a degree in chemistry and all kind of different things. And to work with those guys, you pick up stuff.
Sure.
You learn a lot when you're working around people like that, you know.
And you don't have to have the degree to learn it.
No. I like what they're doing nowadays that I've seen on TV lately, that they're teaching trades to young people.
Yeah, back to the trade.
Instead of college education, teach them a trade. And it's doing real well.
Yeah, that's that new Pie Center thing they got and all that.
And you know, Dee, I used to think, how can I wake up of a morning and have a lot of people going to work for me? And then when they go to work that day, I'm involved somewhere or another, and I get just the tiniest little piece of what they earned that day. And then that's how I come up with the rental place and different stuff like that.
But you were always in the record business. You kept that while you're doing all these big real estate deals, because you've done some really big real estate deals.
Yeah, I started the record company with the final Brewer's record service, Brewer's Towing and Recovery. I started it with a $2,500 piece of junk that I drug out of my daddy's junkyard, and I made it roadworthy. And from that $2,500 wrecker, I grew into those big Kenworth 30-ton hydraulic wreckers. You know,
Running 24 hours a day.
7 days, 24. Matter of fact, I've had my friends see me out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they'd yell at me at a traffic light, "Hey, Brewer, when do you sleep?" Because I was awake you'd see me all night long.
Well, I know you'd be doing that, and then you'd be doing this land deal, and you'd be doing this plaza and hanging the drop ceilings. Did you literally sleep less?
I slept kind of like they claim Napoleon. You know, they say that the man never slept. Truth is, he took cat naps, and he would sleep a little, as long as you get 8 hours sleep within a 24-hour period. It don't have to all be together. And so I'd sleep 3 or 4 hours, and then I'd be up all night a lot of nights with the city of Cleveland, you know, or Bradley County, working wrecks and all. And then the next day, I'd lay down and I'd take a quick nap, and I'd head on down to the station and work. I'd maybe get my work done and run home, lay down, and take another nap. And so I was getting my rest, but I wasn't getting it like I should be, I don't guess.
Do you think it messed you up, or do you think that it was fine?
In my case, I acclimated to that type life. And I had always worked at Farmers Chemical on swing shift.
Oh.
And so you never adjust to swing shift. You get used to working midnights, now you're back on day shift. You get used to that, second shift. And so when I went into the record business, I was used to being up all night long. And when I got into the long distance heavy duty, I go to bed and I never know. I might wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We need you to get a truck that's broke down in Orlando. Or you got to go to Pennsylvania. Never know when I wake up which direction I'm going.
When you go get those trucks, you have to drive that far and then get it off the interstate?
Yes, sir.
And so it's just sitting there that whole time?
And you got a driver that's broke down. And he's sitting there and he's not happy. So you need to get moving.
And you're 3 hours away.
Yeah.
Or 4.
Yeah. And it's don't matter if it's snow, sleet, like your mailman saying, you know. I've got a man broke down, and I called it swapping horses. I'd get a good horse, like in Charleston, it's Superior Cars, the chemical company. And I'd have to go down to Louisiana to their chemical factory down there. I'd go up there, hook up to a truck, a good running truck, you know. I take it down there. Now, I put it under the tanker that he's got. I grab his broke down truck. That's my dead horse. I take a good horse and I pick up a dead horse and bring it home. And the drivers really appreciate it when you get to them pretty quick, because they really would like to go home. You know.
Now, when you're doing this, why aren't you still doing just real estate deals and just and let that other go? I have trouble with that too, is the reason I'm asking that question.
Yeah, I have second guessed myself 1,000 times when I flipped that farm out on Morgan Road. That's got the old enamel, it's still standing, built out of, back then people built their houses.
The stove part?
The old stove products,
Right. Enamel panels.
Yeah.
About that thick.
Yeah, that was your siding.
Yeah.
And so I bought that farm, I flipped it, and where I messed up, I didn't know about taxes, and I sold it in 5 months. Should have kept it another month back then, you know. I paid capital gains. And so I never forgot that. But I thought, what if I'd have stayed in real estate at that time and left all this other stuff out of my life? Where would I be today?
What's your thoughts now?
Sir?
What do you think now? Would you have been better if you had to do it all over again? Would you have quit and just did that, or would you have kept your day job, as they call it?
Well, if I went into real estate, my plan at the time I took the schooling with Stoney, my plan was to get some cash cows scattered around and draw rent off of them and manage my duplexes, triplexes, apartments, whatever. And then when the real estate goes into a slump, I'm still okay. You got so many real estate people I've noticed in the past, they get in it when it's booming. Now then, when it goes bad, they go back to their regular job. Now then, it booms, here they come again, back in real estate. And so the guy that stays in it has got the advantage, like John Paul Douglas, didn't jump in and jump out.
No.
Stayed in it all the time. When the booms hit, he was already established and ready to go.
Yeah, and he didn't blow money either, John Paul.
No, I thought the world of that
Yeah, I
man.
did too. Hey, right there's his picture.
I've seen that picture. I really like that picture of John Paul.
He liked you. He loved you.
Yeah, me and John, I could tell you some tales.
I probably know him. I was probably driving.
You probably know most of
I was
them.
probably driving part
Yeah.
of most of them.
Yeah, we was up at Gondoliers one night, and he was getting a little bit loud.
Was that when it was on 25th Street?
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
And John was getting a little bit loud, and I told the waiter, I said, hey, if you would, tell that man over there in the booth to quieten down.
That would have been
That the
good.
man over in the other booth wants him to quieten down. And so he said, will he get mad? I said, no, John won't get mad.
They didn't know him like I know him.
And so the waiter says, I'm going to do it. He went over there and he said, sir, the man over here in this other booth wants you to quieten down. And I'm not going to tell you John's reply. But he had a good, you tell that man in that booth over there to blankety, 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 blank.
John Paul was the greatest guy I've ever known, but I've seen him when he was like that. And you're telling exactly the way he would have done it.
I just, and then he looked around and seen me sitting there.
And went into laughing.
He said, Johnny Brewer. And he started laughing. And he says, honey, look, it's Johnny Brewer. Look, he's got hair. Look at Johnny Brewer. He's got hair. And that's the way John and I met him. I was going to get a light ballast there behind where his office was there next to KFC in Stony Brooks' building.
Right, yeah, with Jim Hicks at the time.
I didn't stop to steal Stoney's renter.
Yeah.
I stopped to tell John, I've got a vacancy, and if you find somebody, you get your percentage you know, I give them first month's rent.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think nothing about it. I left. A few days later, John said, "Hey, I want up there on 25th Street. Is that place still open?" He said, "I think I got it rented." And I said, "Who have you got it rented to, John?" He said, "I'm going to take it myself." And that's how we really got to know each other.
He really liked you. That's after he split off from Bruce, I think.
Yeah.
But why did you keep? You could have made all this money. You were making money in real estate and at the gas station and the record service. But why didn't you quit all that and just go into real estate? Is it because it's got ups and downs?
Well, the towing and recovery operations
No, I mean
are all of it. One thing about it, you don't have a life when you've got a towing and recovery company.
But you kept that.
I kept it, and I finally got big enough, and I cloned a few employees to where they would do things like I do. And David Scroggins is one of them, real good wrecker man. And there's a difference in a truck driver and a wrecker operator. You know, anybody, not anybody, but most everybody can drive a truck. But you put them recovering, say 90,000 pounds out in the middle of I-75 that's turned over, and they really don't know what they're doing. And so I had to stay close with it, and that's the night and day, never resting, weekends. It's a big job to operate a record company like that.
But you had a nose for real estate. You could have made a living doing that.
I could have went that direction, and probably I probably could have done a lot better.
Did you second guess not quitting the record business for years?
I heard a man tell me one time, you get a hold of something and you're doing pretty good at it, you become a corporate coward. You're doing good, you're making a pretty good bit of money, and you're scared to death to turn loose of it and try something else.
Yeah.
You don't want to burn your bridges behind you and go into something. And
so it takes your sting away, doesn't it? As far as doing real estate deals.
Right.
Because you've got security. My uncle used to say security in one hand, opportunity in the other.
Yeah.
I guess is what you're saying. You were keeping both.
Yeah.
Because we know how this real estate does. You might own something for 8 months and make $50,000 on it. That's only $4,000 a month. So what'd you do?
Yeah, you're right. And I've got nothing against women. I even married one of them. But they like security. They really do like you to bring a check home every week. Now, when you're out there freelancing and being what I guess you'd call an entrepreneur.
Gunslinger, I call it. Gunslinger.
You wake up in the morning and you walk out the door, you don't know how much you're going to make that day. The sky's the limit, or you could bust that day and lose a lot. And they don't like that kind of life, I don't think.
And it keeps you nervous.
Oh, yeah, you're always watching the economy.
Yeah.
You're watching the interest rates. You're watching every move that's being made. And so the steady cash flow will keep you doing what you're doing. There you go.
And then the real estate deals can be kind of on the side. You don't have to make as much money on them. You can be a little more picky about what you sell for and a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
And what was you mentioned Bobby Taylor. So were y'all really good friends?
He was my daddy.
Is that right?
Not biologically, but Scott knows how I felt about his daddy, you know. John Hale, that left the bank, you know, early. John Hale asked me one day, said, "What have you got on Bobby Taylor that he's so good to you?" And I said, "Scott, I have no idea." He said, "Johnny, he treats you better than he does the employees." And I said, "Well, you know, I started doing business with Bobby Taylor way back years ago.
Wonder what he did like about you so much.
I asked him one time, I said, why would you loan money on a 90-day note? Back then, $8,250 was a lot of money. And that's what I paid for that old farm out on Morgan Road. Mm-hmm. It was dirt road, no electricity, no nothing, no water, no nothing. And I said, and Bobby, I don't understand it after I got to know you. You're very conservative.
Very conservative.
Yeah. And you loaned a little old young kid with a dream that kind of money on a 90-day note. And he said, John, I just looked at you. You had your work boots on. And I thought, I believe I've got me a man here that'll do what he says. And he says, I took a change on you. And I said, well, I've made you a lot of money through the years, and you've helped me make a lot of money. And so we was like that the rest of our life. And he called me a lot of mornings at home, and he'd say, John Brewer, tell me what's going on down at exit 20. He called me the mayor of exit 20. And
how much older was he than you?
Bobby was probably 20 years my senior.
He was smart, wasn't he?
Oh,
he had a nose for it, didn't he?
Yeah. And when the Bank of Cleveland first started out, we were hunting people to invest, for the Bank of Cleveland. And Bobby come down there, him and John Hale, and wanted me to buy stock. And banks are not known to pay a dividend for quite a while. A lot of concrete and asphalt, but no dividend. I said, Bobby, I ain't got the money. I just don't have it. And he said, you don't have to worry about the money. I'm going to loan it to you. He took my excuse away. And I said, Bobby, I really don't want to borrow that money to buy stock. I really was scared of it, scared of the tying the money up forever and not getting no return on it. And he threw that old big arm around me. And about a 5x5 office is all we had there. And they had me surrounded.
Yeah. Him and John Hale and Scott.
Yeah, him and John Hale both had me surrounded in that little office. And he said, Johnny Brewer, how many times have you come to me through the years and I've told you no? I said, well, truth is, Bobby, you had never said no. He said, no, and you're not going to tell me no either. Sign it right now.
And you signed it,
I signed it. Best move I ever made.
Why, sure. Look at it. They've paid dividends for years, and it just goes up, and there's just no problem. There's not been any negative news, no scandals, nothing.
We're one of the top banks in the Southeast right now.
I guess if you'd have took every dime you had at that time and put in it, you'd been unbelievable.
And I had some friends of mine. They said, "Let me put a bug in your ear. If anything happens to Bobby Taylor, you better get out of that bank." And I said, no, you don't understand.
You don't understand.
Bobby Taylor does not work at the bank. He comes in and shakes hands. He's a figurehead. Just shows up to shake hands and greet people. I said, the bank is, we've got a lot of talented people in that bank.
Scott's not going to do nothing wrong. He's not going to mess nothing up.
He's very conservative.
Not going to mess nothing up.
And
I was in there one day with Bobby, and I never will forget it. Of course, I banked from there forever. And I got, during certain times, you get to where you're just over leveraged. Have you been there?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've been there, and it's a different feeling. And I went in there one day, and I said, Bobby, I just got I've got a lot of money owed. And he said, Dee, I wouldn't have had nothing if I hadn't borrowed money. He said, you can't save yourself into prosperity. You got to borrow it to make it.
How much? Got to.
And that I never have forgot that. And he was exactly right. And I should have done more then than I did.
Did you ever try to loan you money and you didn't want to borrow it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And then in 2008, all the banks said, we want you to pay it off. Were you already out of everything by then?
Yeah.
See, I was
Yeah.
still in the middle.
Yeah.
That was, in your career, it would have been equivalent to probably, was it 82 or 81 when things kind of went south?
That was Jimmy Carter years right in there.
Was that the year? I remember Bob Kaler and some of those builders and
That was Cleveland National Bank, wasn't it?
yeah, but no, Bob Kaler built houses.
Yeah.
And with somebody else. Anyway, I was down at John Kender's one day because I always hung around John Kender's office, and I think it was Bob Kaler. They were talking about the economy being bad. This was probably 88 or 89. And Bob said, guys, y'all don't know what the bad economy is till you wake up at 3 in the morning and you pass yourself going down the hall. I don't know exactly what that meant, but it meant he was going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was when you could borrow money. It just, the interest was crazy. You couldn't pay it.
The Jimmy Carter years, I went up there, I'd hand Bobby Taylor all the money I could rake up that month, to pay interest on my money, you know. And I said, Bobby, that's all I can find. I've sold my lawnmower and everything. Just joking, you know. and he says, he said, just calm down. What you can't pay, we added on to the back of the note. A lot of heads will fall before people like you go under. He
Well,
said,
that's true, wasn't it?
the ones that have been living off the fat of the land, they're not going to make it. But the ones that are truly hardworking people and dedicated to their jobs, they're going to make it through all this mess. And sure enough, it wasn't long till the interest rates they went up 22%.
Golly.
And if you had a lot of money floating
Lord, hell.
on that 22%, buddy, it was tough.
That'd take a payment of $500 and make it $1,500 overnight.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay that, could you? Couldn't pay triple.
Yeah, it was like watching the CNN, CSNBC business news every morning. Have the feds changed anything yet? Are they going down? And sure enough, we had double-digit unemployment. We had double-digit interest rates. Any category you want to talk about with double-digit.
Golly.
And
I remember I worked for my uncle, and all we did for 2 years was painted one house and added a screen porch on somebody's house in Hopewell. Me and him did all the work because there wasn't nothing else to do.
yeah. And the people that had the money seemed like they were sitting on it.
You know, that goes back to what we were saying, why we've kept our day job. My day job's building houses. Yours was record service. And
Yeah.
we do this real estate stuff kind of on the side. And it's not really for the money. It's really for the pats on the back, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I'm going to turn the tables here.
Okay.
I know your daddy wasn't into contracting
No.
and building.
No.
Now, what made you turn and go that direction?
I've always understood the business. Just somehow understood it. Does that make sense? I've just understood
You had a feeling
construction.
for it.
Yeah, construction, real estate. I've just understood it. And my uncle built, and my dad's stepdad built. So I think maybe subconsciously I heard that. But I just got into it when I was 12 working for my uncle. He didn't build a house from the time I was 12 to the time I was 18 that I did not work on. That was through the 265 and 285 house. Yeah, they'd build like 15 a year.
Yeah.
Make, $2,000 a house. So that's how I got into it.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
I sold grits at the Village Shopping Center,
Yeah.
and you sold grits back when you could sell them for something.
Yeah.
I sold them when you couldn't give them away.
Yeah, I built my own route. The rich kids seemed like they got all the paper routes.
Well, I asked my dad about that because you had mentioned that, and he said that he had gotten a motorcycle. His stepdad had bought a motorcycle and couldn't pay for it, so he ran into a guy that was quitting his route for the Cleveland
Well.
Daily Banner. In fact, I got a picture of his motorcycle. You said you saw the motorcycle driving by. Can you get a copy? Can you get this, Gwen? So this, you said you saw him drive by Deer Park.
That's a Harley Hummer is what it is, I believe. I'll look at it in a minute and tell you.
That was his motorcycle.
Let's see here.
His glasses. You got bad ears, but good eyes.
Now that one, he had moved into a little bigger one there. The one I remember was a blue 125 Harley.
Well, those are two different ones, so maybe it's
okay, all right.
maybe the top one was.
Yeah. Yeah, and the 125 Harley Hummer run off of Magneto. And now you move on up to what Oakley Woody Road was a 165, and it had a battery on it.
I hadn't heard Oakley Woody name in years.
Yeah,
Well, I
Oakley
liked
Woody.
him.
Yeah, I think he's deceased, isn't he?
He's died, yeah.
Yeah.
A pretty good while back. Boy, he was a hard worker.
Yeah, Oakley Woody. And see, you had the video rental place up there,
Oakley's
didn't
Video,
you?
yeah.
In Tasso. Yeah,
Yeah, he smoked like a chimney, didn't he?
he was.
Smoked all the time.
You know, I'm an ex-smoker because it was cool. You take your cigarettes and roll them up in your shirt sleeve, you know, and everybody.
What kind did you smoke?
What kind?
Yeah.
What I could steal off my mother.
So it wasn't a
Pall Mall.
specific- Pall Malls? Pall Malls.
Pall Mall,
Yeah,
non-filter.
yeah.
And if she caught me with cigarettes, I could say, Mama, those are the cigarettes that I went to get for you, remember? You know.
Everybody smoked then.
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
You're supposed to. The skating rink, the old North Lee skating ring up there, which was a bowling alley.
Yeah, bowling alley
And
later.
now, I think,
Yeah.
what is it now? Maybe a warehouse or?
I think it's a storage unit.
We skate up there, go out back, and nobody cared if we smoked, even though we was like 14, 15 years old. And nowadays, you know, that's against the law.
Yeah.
I went in a lot of stores and bought cigarettes from my mother back then.
Could you buy alcohol underage then pretty easily, or was it restricted to?
I never bought alcohol, really. My
But I mean-
mother didn't drink, and I didn't drink.
So it wasn't, but I mean, like grocery store, like now you have you got the convenience store up on exit 20.
Yeah, still got it.
Now see, there's another example of what I was talking about. You started that when nobody.
That exit was dead.
Well, I mean, it wasn't even there. What was you thinking?
The future. I told Bobby Taylor and I told Hoyt Clark and
Hoyt,
a lot
yeah.
of people. I said, exit 20 is the best kept secret in the Southeast. I'm telling you, you folks are missing the boat. And I finally got in on the 121 acres, became partners with Miss Benton and Miss Lonis, Evelyn Lonis.
Was Cletus alive then?
Cletus was already gone, and Mr. Lonis was gone. And so I bought Ben Moore out. And
Well, I bet that was tough.
Sir?
I bet that was tough. Buying Ben out.
He's tough
He's
negotiator.
tough.
Let me tell you, I got a lot of respect for Ben Moore.
I don't know anybody that's bought anything from Benmore.
I was able to work with him.
What was the key?
He told me later on that I knew how to talk to people. He said, we was talking out there at one of his pharmacies out there at Calfee's, you know, out there in the parking lot. He had his old coveralls on, his straw hat, bumper sticker that said, eat more beef on that old Dodge truck.
Yeah.
You thought the man ain't got a nickel.
Yeah, 2 dogs in the car.
And we stand there talking, and whatever made him say it, I don't know. But he said, Brewer, you know how to talk to people. That's one thing about you. And I said, well, being coming from you, I'm going to take that as one of the biggest compliments I've ever had. He said, well, you talked me into selling my part of that land down there. And Evelyn was a real nice lady. You know, Bob and Randy's mother.
Yeah, I knew
Evelyn
Bob and Randy
Lomas.
well.
And
Randy Stillwell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Evelyn, I just love her to death. She take that little finger and point at me, and she said, you're a Benmore plant, and you know it. Benmore put you in here. And what are y'all up to? I said,
You wasn't
Evelyn,
doing nothing.
we're not up to nothing. And before she passed, I called her, and I said, Evelyn, I heard you're having a rough time, and I just wanted to call and make sure. Do you still think I'm a Benmore plant? And she said, no, I don't, Johnny. And and me and Bobby June, we've got along real well. Bobby June's 90-something years old, I think.
Is that right?
And she's still got a real sharp mind. And I deal with Brad a lot. You know, Brad Benton.
Well, I like him.
And Brad is a good businessman.
Top notch.
Yeah. And so.
But what was there? No, was the Ramada Inn? Was there a Ramada Inn there at one time?
Was who now?
Was there a Ramada Inn hotel there at one time?
What? No. Cletus Benton had cut the 4 acres out with the intentions of building a Shoney's restaurant and motel combination. And that was why it had on the deed, it said Shoney's. And so I said, Ben, I don't understand it, but it shows on the map that Shoney's owns that property. He said, no, they don't own it. And I said, well, I think they do. It's deeded to them. And so he dug into it, and he talking to me one day, and he said, no, they don't own it. That was something that Cletus had done for the future, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how we got to talking about him selling his share of the property. And it's under contract, as you probably know, right now.
I have heard that through the grapevine. But
Yeah, it's under contract. And a gentleman that it's on the sign down there, so I guess it's common knowledge.
Yeah, it says
who it is, Prior Bacon.
Prior Bacon, yeah.
And I really don't know Prior Bacon.
Well, it was that convenience store you had, they have been coming in there 24 hours a day since you opened the doors.
Oh, that Exxon is a good store. But we just...
Was it like that day one?
Oh, the people that were stocking my shelves begged me to put the ribbons back up. He said, Johnny, they're taking stuff out of our hands before we can even get a price on it. And we can't put it on the shelf as fast as they're buying it.
Well, did anybody question you doing that? Because and right now it all looks like it's a good idea. But at the time there was nothing there except the.
My wife did.
Did she really question it?
She stood outside and she said, and I'm not down on her because she had a question. She said, why are you building such a big store? And I said, Gail, I'm building a big store that would be attractive to anybody. If I die or decide to quit, I want it to where I can pick up the phone and have somebody in here right then if I want to. And so that's why I build it. And I build it. It's a big store, really.
It's big.
If you go inside
but
of
man,
it.
the business
And it's
packed.
And one day there was so many people in there you couldn't walk. And I took a picture of it, and I labeled the picture Brewer's Exxon on a slow day, you know. And we did a lot of things that convenience stores don't normally do. Normally they don't have, I listen to my customers through the years, and they stop and they look, do you have anything that says Tennessee on it? We can't find no souvenirs to take home. And we've overlooked some people, and we need something that says Tennessee. Okay, if you go in there, back then, when we had it, you found back scratchers that said Tennessee on them, Tennessee coffee cups, a lot of stuff Tennessee T-shirts.
Yeah.
And there was people, Dee, that marked on their map exit 20, I mean from up, way up north in Ohio and everywhere. And they'd come in, some people would, some friends of ours stopped in and they said, you've got to stop at that little Exxon store at exit 20. They've got everything. And, you know, you get tired of cloning. Every convenience store you go into is the same old, same old. We had a table that we had all kind of stuff on it, and I worked a deal with a wholesale company over in Saudi Daisy, and anything you can sell me for 50 cents, if you want to clean out all your overstock stuff, whatever, I'll buy it. And I promise you, I'll just mark it up 50 cents, double my money, and I'll sell it. So we took this big table, and Gail put a sign on it, anything on this table, $1. I'm telling you, they come up there with armloads of it and throw it down. And the people that's there now, it don't fit in their organization, so they took that out. And that was, I mean,
It makes no sense sometimes.
and it was making a lot of money. And you know, that's not a lot on one item, 50 cents. But when they take 4 or 5 different items and come up there and lay them down, and that's going on all day long. Walking out
Well,
the door.
and it also makes people stop there to get stuff like that. Because I wouldn't think about tourists, but I guess they do stop and want something from Tennessee. Maybe they're getting ready to head towards Georgia. And not a big deal to us, but it is to them.
Yeah, and that makes them want to stop and buy gas there the next time they come through, because they seen that whatever they wanted and they didn't have time to buy it right then, or they didn't have the money or whatever, and they stop the next time and get their gas. And I need to buy you something for Christmas. I kind of know your taste. Oh, I know where one of them's at down there at exit 20. I'm just making, you know.
But even on 25th Street, you made those plaza units small for the time. What would, am I right? I mean, at the time, plazas were more, 36 feet wide on the front or something. But you came in there with 20 feet wide. And
20 by 45, 900 square feet.
Just enough to get a lobby, a break room, an office, and a bathroom.
Yeah.
It's calculated.
Yeah, and I had one, Dave, and it was 450 square feet, and I advertised it. Do you need a place to hang your hat? You just want to get away from home and a place to hang your hat, and you're going to be out in the field the rest of the day working. You don't need a big office. You just need a place for the girl to answer the phone or the man.
But even the 20 by 42s, or 45s, wasn't that still unique for the time? Because at the time, all you had was Colonial Plaza that's wide, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that was probably Glenn Ramsey more than it was me on the width and the square footage, you know. And we started out renting those units for $250. $250
I wonder what
a
it
unit.
is. Well, you still own it, right?
Still own it, yeah.
What's that same unit, roughly?
Those units would be on up at least $10, $12 a foot now. Yeah.
How much is that?
And you get $750, $800 a month on them now. And that's not bad.
No, it's got good
Not
parking.
when you think about people are renting an apartment, a 1-bedroom maybe,
Yeah, there's $500-600.
$500-600.
Maybe more.
A 2-bedroom, you can rent one of my offices for less money than that. A
Were you,
2-bedroom.
were you one that tried to get as much as you could per month, or did you try to put it down there where you knew they could pay it and be more consistent?
I'm 100% occupied since 1974.
Is that
I
right?
stay full totally.
Is that? Do you think that's because you try to be under the market?
Well, they can't nobody compete with somebody that built back in 74. It's hard to compete with me.
You just can't compete with it.
Because, you know, and I'm not tooting my horn, but there ain't nobody owns it but me. You know, it's paid for, in other words.
Yeah.
And I treat my people right. I don't jump their rent, but I can't eat the property taxes. When the taxes go up, and then there's other maintenance. Like if you ride by there now, you'll notice that I just sealed the parking lot.
I noticed that. 'Cause I used to go get down
striping it.
I used to go down to Steve. He'd always crack my back.
Yeah, yeah, and well, you remember we had the what I call them headhunters. What was her name?
Yeah.
Denise
No,
Malone.
yeah, she was there for a long time.
Yeah.
I used to go into John Paul's and I'd walk in her place by accident because the doors were right there next to each other, and I'd walk in, she'd be standing
Yeah,
there.
yeah, and we kept them for years, you know,
Long time.
there.
Long
and then
time.
there's some super good people that are there with a tanning factory.
Yeah.
Sheena runs it for
Sheena,
her
yeah.
daughter Shauna, and.
Her and John Paul were friends.
And now then, and now then we've got Todd. He just hadn't been there very long, but we got the gun store there, the White Oak Armory,
I hadn't been in there.
and the man is doing great. It's a super location, and I think a lot of the police cars, I see them there a lot, but.
That's one of the only places we've got in town unless you go to Charleston or to Posey, so I guess it's a...
Yeah, he's probably the only game. Now, he's taken over the big beauty shop now.
I think that they quit selling guns at Walmart and some of these places.
I believe they did. Yeah.
Well, it's a whole nother world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Todd, what is Todd's last name? But anyway, he's a cousin to Terry Morrow, little Terry, you know.
The convenience stores from out at 58, Terry Morrow's.
That's Steve.
Steve,
out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
He sold, I think.
And he sold out. You know, the man was a licensed attorney.
Oh, I remember when he was going to school and everybody
But
celebrated.
he said he'd rather be in the convenience
Well, he
store.
he didn't operate as an attorney but for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Went back to selling hamburgers there at 58 Shortstop.
Yeah, he was over there in Hidden Cove,
Yeah.
over there where the river house is at.
Yeah.
And he lived over there, you know, in the log house there on. As you go in, it's on your left there on Jameson Drive. Yeah.
I'm building a building now over at Judd Lane over at
All right.
next
You're
to-
building
yeah,
where?
I'm building a building for Alan Jones up at Pangle Point, into Judd Lane.
Oh,
and
you are?
And Stanley Judd. You ever know him?
Oh yeah.
I stopped by and saw him here. And
Yeah. Is
he's
that
doing
that
real
one
good.
used to be Harpo's place there?
but it's
That island peninsula?
yeah, no, Stanley's is there at the Nip and Sip.
Yeah, I haven't been through there, but it's the cut through to go over to the 58
Right, right.
place there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like going out through there.
yeah,
It's just different, isn't it?
yeah. And you know, I've looked at those houses through the years that Gail and I were looking for a place on the river.
Yeah.
And I looked at the ones we've turned down, range from anywhere from 70,000 all the way up to like probably the highest one back then was 140,000, and we didn't buy none of them because it just wasn't what we wanted, and we thought they was a little bit high.
And now it's what?
Well-
8765.
The one up there next to the bridge,
Uh-huh.
I went up there to the auction, like $10,000 bringing $1 million.
Golly.
Scott Reimer brought it. Yeah, that's right up there at the bridge. And it's public knowledge. I mean, it was auctioned
I remember
off.
the auction. Yeah, I started to go, but
Yeah, John Sanders auctioned
Yeah.
it off. And then the one across the street from our place went for an auction at $270,000, and then he had to pay to tear the old house down. And so that lot,
and in the winter the water's down.
yeah, when in the winter we don't have no water.
I've often thought it'd be just better off to get a houseboat.
No grass to mow.
No, yeah.
nothing to
What
maintain.
can you spend on it? Spend all you want.
Yeah, I've got a friend up there that bought a houseboat, and it's up there at B&B Marina, and the gentleman that owned it had died, and advertised it to sale. So Jim Birch went up there and looked at it, and he liked it, and he bought it. And it's he could tell you more about it than me, you know, but it's probably 15 years old. And it's one of them houseboats that really looks like a boat.
Hey, I hadn't seen Jim Birch in a long time.
He's doing real well. He's got a condo down in Florida.
That's what I thought.
That's where he's at right now, making friends. He loves to make
he's a
friends.
good guy. He helped me out a lot. A
Yeah.
lot.
And,
And Harry, I liked Harry.
yeah,
His
yeah.
dad.
She's out west now.
No, it's Harry, his dad. Jim's dad.
Oh, yeah, Harry Birch.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, you know, Jim did a lot of work over at that block company.
Oh.
Harry was really good with the books,
Harry was the books.
the brain.
Yeah.
And Jim did the hands-on every day running
Every
that company
day.
and all.
He run himself to
And
death, man.
so what Jim needed through the gears was that big pat on the back, me and you talking about a while ago.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that his daddy done it all. Well,
No.
no, Jim.
he just kept the
And
books.
I told Jim.
Upstairs, you had to walk up those long stairs.
I told Jim, I said, you and your dad were the perfect marriage to make that block company go. You know.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they got the golf cart the golf
Yeah.
course out there. Willie Bain and I went down to Wolf, down at the village. And Ron Moore was still alive
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
And his wife, Debbie.
Yeah.
And we went in there and we talked about old times and landmarks in Cleveland, and we started getting phone calls, you know, of does anybody remember,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
whatever. And that was really enjoyable.
I missed their show because I enjoyed that.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when Hoyt Clark was on there? He could name everybody's parents and grandchildren and kids and who they married and everything.
He can tell you not only their name, but their mother and daddy, and who their grandma and grandpa was,
and where they
their
worked,
cousins,
and where they worked in 1963 in February.
Yeah, he's a walking computer, and his mind. Hoyt, I don't think Hoyt would care if I told his age. I believe it's 78,
Probably about
and
70,
his mind is still as sharp as a tack.
Yours is too.
Well, thank you. There's that pat on the back. I appreciate it.
How do you tell people I'm not buying anything else?
I don't know if you've experienced it, but you get to where you got a lot of people that come to you with all these ideals, and they don't have nothing to put on the table. I learned that. I had to go to school. I didn't go back to Tasso Tech now. I had to go to Yale. I mean, I took a lick because I trusted two people and started this company called Tempco Insulation. And they thought that you could say, hi, my name's X, whatever, you know. Let me and my wife take you and your wife out for a steak dinner and maybe a few drinks. And we'll play a round of golf the next day. The company's paying for it, don't worry about it.
And somebody somewhere needs to hang the insulation, right?
Yeah, they've been watching too much TV, Dallas
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they thought that was the way you conduct business, and they bankrupt the company, left me whole in the bag, you know.
Golly.
And so I learned a lesson. If somebody's not bringing something to the table, and they can lose as much as you, then you don't go into partners with them.
And I'm going to make the payments no matter what. That's my problem.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm going to make it no matter what. So,
yeah.
and if you're not business, the Bible talks about being unequally yoked.
Unequally yoked.
People that have different views, not just on that, but if you're in business with a guy that's rich and you're not, it's hard to deal with him.
Yeah, don't you think it's better to fly by yourself?
Oh, it always is. It's better to fly by yourself and have some good friends you can depend on if you need help. That's probably as good as a partner.
You can make a judgment call. You can turn on a dime.
You can say, hey, let's pay for this and not worry about it no more.
Right.
Let's give that away.
Yep.
And you're not worried about giving their half away.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, and I thought, I was thinking back while we was talking, my goal was to have a few people getting up every morning, and I never had realized it, Dee. The one day I was thinking, okay, every time somebody gets a tan, I get just a tiny little bit of what they spend to get that tan. I get it in the form of rent at the end of the month. When you take your dog down there to Kim, and she grooms your dog, cuts the hair and all, I get a little tiny bit of what Kim did that all the way down through there. Every good and it's sold, I get just a little bit of it. And so in effect, I've got a lot of people that get up every day and go to work.
That's really the same thing.
Yeah.
Jim Elmore used to say, I don't care, I hope they do well in their business, I just hope they're doing it and renting it from me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've told some young people that I don't think in life that you can start out with nothing and make anything with your hand, just your two hands.
There's not enough time.
No, you've got to do some creative financing, put some thoughts in, and don't think it's going to just come to you easy, because it's not going to come easy. You've got to dedicate yourself and stick to it. And whenever the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
And you can about outthink any problem you have if you just really think.
That's right.
I mean, think and work your way out of it. But some people get into stuff and they don't have any, some people, I'm not saying physical work, but I mean thinking and really working late and all that stuff. The ones that don't do that, it generally doesn't end well.
Yeah.
And not always, but I'm talking generally, because we've seen them, hadn't we? That go by the wayside, that just thought they were supposed to be like the TV shows. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
In time.
Yeah, they just don't have that. I don't know if it's inherited, if it's a gene that you inherit, the go for the gusto,
A sense of urgency.
Yeah, yeah, and I enjoy listening to the people in the world that have really done well. That I know I'll never meet them, but I enjoy listening to like Warren Buffett.
Yeah,
when he's on the
Elon Musk even. I like to listen to him.
And I enjoyed one morning they was talking to him about the big party he had thrown and how much it cost, and that they didn't think it was right. And did he write that off as a tax deduction? Mm-hmm. He said, no, that was my money. The taxes had been paid. It belonged to me. And how I spend my money, he said, I've got everything I need in life. How many houses can you live in at one time? Mm-hmm. How many cars can you drive? How much food can you eat? How much traveling can you do?
My dad said you can only wear one nice shirt at a time comfortably.
Because he what?
He said you can only wear one shirt at a time comfortably.
That's right.
Because you can have two nice shirts, but if you wear them both, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and he said I actually tap dance to work every day. Warren Buffett said, I love my work so much that I tap dance, you know. And I thought, well, you know what? That used to be me.
But why do some people have the goal of not working? They think that success is being able to not work. And to me, if you had retired when you was 55, you'd been one of the most miserable people in Cleveland.
Oh, I couldn't have stayed retired. I know a lot of people in town right now that have come out of retirement because they were bored to death. They just can't stand it.
It would work on my mind.
Well, you'd wake up every day, Dee, and you'd say, the world's out there real busy and there's things happening and I'm not part of it.
I'm sitting here watching the morning,
Yeah.
Good Morning America or something.
How old was our friend John Douglas?
He was about 70. If you hadn't asked me, I'd have told you. I'm going to say 77, something like that.
And he was still active, wasn't he?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, active in every way.
Yeah. And I don't think John had any intentions of retiring, did he?
No, John loved money.
He loved his work.
He loved his work, and he loved to make money, and he wasn't going to spend it necessarily. That wasn't
Yeah.
what it was about.
Was he that conservative
He was kind of conservative.
or frugal? Use whatever words you want.
Yeah,
to.
he didn't really require stuff. You know, he didn't really require things. He liked to go to, you know, Biloxi or Tunica and gamble a little on the weekends or play those slot machines. He liked that.
Yeah, I was talking with the guy that owns the Toyota place down there one day about a very wealthy man that had passed not long ago. I don't want to use names. And he said, you know what's sad about him? He never enjoyed his money. And, you know, I got to thinking about it. He never went on really a leisure vacation. He never took his work boots off. And
But maybe that's what he wanted to do.
that was where he was happiest.
I mean, what?
He never enjoyed. He made a lot of money, but he never enjoyed it.
But what? You know. So why would he have to go out of town? I mean, he did enjoy it. He wasn't working somewhere he didn't want to work. So
Yeah.
that was enjoying his money.
That to me, that was.
That's just what he liked. Some people like
Yeah.
blue, some people like red.
He'd rather cut a deal and see the deal come together and make it work as to go out and celebrate. And
It just wasn't his thing. Some people are like that. Some people want to spend it and some don't.
yeah,
Some people spend a lot of money for hair transplants, and I don't. I don't care. So you know
that,
it doesn't mean that I don't want to enjoy life because I don't have hair transplants.
there you're talking about a hair transplant, and I'm talking about maybe going to start shaving mine. You know, Steve Harvey, for instance,
Steve Harvey, the
Family Feud.
yeah,
guy.
the guy that made the mistake on Miss America. Remember that? He read the wrong.
Yeah,
He read the wrong.
Steve Harvey.
Yeah.
And they've never let him
They
live
never
that
let him
down.
down. He got through it pretty good though. He kind of laughed it off. Well,
Yeah.
that was bad. What, he named the wrong one?
Yeah, and then what is the guy's name? It's on America's Got Talent.
Oh yeah.
Um,
He's got that germophobia
got
disease.
the little. Oh yeah, he
can't-
elbows
yeah.
on, you know, and all that. Howie Mandel.
Howie
Howie
Mandel.
Mandel.
Yeah.
And he's got the slick heads, you know, and it's coming into fashion. It really is.
I'm hoping it is.
It is. Yes, it is.
I've got a good head for being bald.
Oh yeah, yeah. You could just go ahead and just do it all.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But
Get out
you'd
of the
have
shower.
to do it, you'd have to do it every day though.
Yeah. Oh,
Because then I'd think I had
well,
to.
they make those that go on your hand like a ring.
Yeah.
And you just do like that all over your head, you know, with your hand.
I always wondered if I had a wart or what do you call it, or scar. Maybe.
Yeah, something,
I don't-
some kind of a growth,
I think
maybe.
I'm going to just not get it cut it off. Just not cut it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, I know I feel a scar up here. When I was a kid, I was chopping corn because I'd seen elderly people do it. I was about 4.5 years old, maybe 5, and there's a double blade axe. Well, I'd chop, and then I'd raise the axe, and it'd fall, and it hit me right in the head. And I felt blood running down my face, and I felt of it, and I went and told my mother. I said, "Mama, I think I've hurt myself." And she said my head was full of gashes. Where that axe,
Oh, you hit it a couple of times.
oh, I hit it a lot of times. I'm hard-headed, I'm telling you. And I had chopped a lot of corn, but I'd cut my head a lot too, you know. And so I'm sure if I shaved my head,
You'd have
that I've
those
got
scars.
a bunch of scars right up here.
And that was a long time ago.
You know, yeah, I was, like I said, golly, I'm 79 now.
What's your hobby now?
I've got, I think, half a dozen at least off the top of my head of what I call phone friends. And we talk on a daily basis about different things. Politics are getting pretty heavy right now. And so I've got some friends that are opposite of me, and we don't argue.
But you like to discuss it.
Sometimes they get so mad at me, and I said, "Hey, now I thought we was just going to have a debate. I'm not going to argue politics with you." Well, you know, blah blah blah. And,
So that's the hobby, is to talk to. I guess that's you don't do any walking or extra golfing or nothing.
I will later on, but right now that knee that I had put in on my birthday, April the 14th.
Gwen just had one put in.
You just had a knee put in. Did yours work out okay?
2 weeks.
Mine was tore off on a motorcycle back when I was young, and everything was well. The doctor said he had to move a lot of stuff around. And his name is, he's a good doctor, Radford.
Yeah,
Is
is that who you
is
use?
that him? He's really good. And he said, I said, that was my leg a pretty mess when you got in there. He said, laughed, and he said, I had to move a lot of stuff around. And so I'm trying to get over that.
You're just going real slow, right? Just
Right.
walking real slow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
How long ago has it been?
April the 14th.
Yeah.
But I think coming out of the swimming pool, I wanted my son offered to help me. And I said, "No, Johnny, don't help me. I don't want you to make an invalid out of me. I want to do it myself." And I powered up. I call it powering up with that leg.
Yeah.
And I think I pulled a muscle in my knee there. But, you know, like I told the guy a while ago, I'm gonna get me a new one of these days. I'm not worried about it.
Are you looking forward to the hereafter?
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah. You know, I've told, and I don't know. I'm not going to get up here and start preaching, but I talked to my dad a lot, and I think he died an atheist. I don't know, but I think I tried to talk to him. And I said, "Daddy, you like to play poker, and you like to play the odds." I said, "Give me the odds on this little chip we called Earth landing perfectly 93 million miles from the sun to sustain life. If it was 5,000 miles further out, we'd be a ball of
Yeah,
ice.
or closer.
Or 5,000 miles closer, we'd burn up." But I said, "You know, you ever thought about it, how it landed in the perfect place for life? And then you look at all the beautiful stuff around you and you say, oh, it just happened. All this stuff just happened." I said, "I don't believe things like that just
It's hard to
happen."
believe, isn't it? I just
Now,
can't.
I don't care if you want to call him Jehovah, you want to call him God, whatever you
Whatever.
want to call him. I call him the Creator, and his name to me is God. And I'm a believer, because if you don't believe, God, that's bad. That when you die, you're just going to go where? I don't like
And
that.
I feel him, don't you? That's the other thing.
Yeah,
I'm not just believing. I feel it.
Yeah, I tell you, and it's funny where it hits you at.
I know it, and when it hits you, different times.
Yeah, up there in Dollywood, there's a little chapel up there. And I wandered off from my people, you know, and I got up there and I sat down in that little chapel. And Dolly sang, I don't even remember the name of it, Rise Again, maybe. And when all of a sudden, the Spirit come all over me, and I shouted out loud.
And that's not your nature.
I just started shouting, and this man walked up, and he was coming in, and I said, I'm gonna tell you what, sit down. If it don't touch you, you can't be touched. And it was a religious experience. I know I felt it. And let's see, there was another time that the chill bumps just come up all over you, and you know that you're in the presence of something, you know. And yeah, my wife was the type girl that was drugged to church. I heard a preacher preach on it one day. She was a druggie.
Just drugged to church,
Yeah, because she was drugged to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, vacation Bible school, all that. Well, Gail and I married at a young age. She was 16. I was 19. All right. Her mother says, come on, get ready and go to church with me. And Gail said, I never will forget it. Mama, I'm a married woman now, and you can't make me go to church. And I said, Gail, don't do your mother that way, you know. And so she didn't go. And years later, one morning, I looked at her, and she's getting out of the shower, getting dressed. I said, where are you going? She said, I'm going to church. And Dee, that goes back to that verse about a child that's raised in the church will always go back. You know?
7 years, something like that. It says 7 years.
Yeah, so and what have I got to lose? I've got a lot to lose if I don't believe, but I've got everything to gain. So, hey.
There's got to be something else out here, and I believe it's God.
Yeah, this is not all there is.
Well, if we go up there, I want us to have a cup of coffee.
Okay.
Hey, Johnny.
I enjoyed it, really did.